girlfriend of a Boston police officer whose body was found
in the murder trial of Karen Reed after the jury said it was unable to
they
reach
will
a
retry
verdict.
Karen Reed
is
after a judge declared a
Hi, alternates. Welcome back to day 21. So what did you do with 5 entire days off of trial? Did you pick up a new hobby? Did you watch a new movie? Did you head to the beach? Honestly, it feels like a lifetime since I've been on the Karen Reed case, but here we are. Before I begin, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who has listened so far. Thank you for subscribing and leaving reviews and comments wherever you can. We truly appreciate the feedback, and we also appreciate all of your support. If you haven't already, I hope that you've caught up with our weeks 1 and 2 of the Sean Combs recap, because that case is really heating up. All right, let's get into it. Today, day 21, we started off with quite a delay, but eventually we heard from one witness. Yep, just one witness, and that witness will be back on the stand tomorrow. Today's testimony was very technical. If I hear Techstream data one more time, I might actually scream. But no, really, today's evidence will be very important for the Commonwealth. The witness was Dr. Judson Welcher. He's an accident reconstructionist who works with Mr. Burgess. Remember Mr. Burgess, the guy who hasn't finished his degree in decades? Yeah, that guy. Well, Dr. Welcher works with him. And listen, we don't know what the defense has up their sleeve yet with this witness, but Dr. Welcher testified that he has a mechanical engineering degree as well as a master's degree. He basically studies the physics and engineering of car crashes. He started his own company, successfully ran it for several years, and sold that company in 2022. I believe that he is an accident reconstructionist. In preparation for his report for the Karen Reed case, he reviewed a slew of information, including police reports, several other reports, ring video from John O'Keefe's house, when Karen Reed backed up into his car. He also reviewed police cruiser cameras, photos and videos of the scene, video of Reed's car being pulled into the Canton Sallyport. He also reviewed diagrams, surveillance footage from the bars, Lexus Connect, Verizon records, witness statements, media interviews by Karen Reed, lab reports, John O'Keefe's GPS data from his cell phone, weather reports, and so much more. You get the picture. This guy looked at a lot of information. But in addition to this information, he gathered his own evidence or his own data, even going as far as buying the same year, make, and model vehicle as Karen Reed's Lexus. And he did this in order to run these tests and to recreate certain aspects of what he was doing. After conducting his research, he prepared a PowerPoint presentation, and that was dated in January of 2025. In his report, he worked on 3 things. 1, he showed the triggering points that Karen Reed's car made from when it was turned on at the Waterfall to when it was turned off at John's house. And the triggering points that night were a 3-point turn and what I'm going to call like a speedy backing up maneuver and then going forward action. The second thing he worked on was recreating Karen's car backing up into John's car at 5 a.m. And the third thing that he worked on was recreating a pedestrian collision using John's exact measurements to show the types of injuries that a person might sustain from being hit by the back of a Lexus, specifically the same year, make, and model as Karen Reed's vehicle. The first thing he reviewed or commented on was the crash data retrieval and the event data recorder. Crash data retrieval is also known as the CDR, and the event data recorder is also known as the EDR. And those are items that they retrieved from, or basically data points that they retrieved from Karen Reed's Lexus. The CDR, which reports car crashes, revealed that Karen's car had not been in a collision, which Dr. Welcher testified was normal and expected, even if it did hit a pedestrian, because that data only captures actual collisions with other big objects. Think like a car or a tree. He didn't actually give those exact examples, but he said, listen, a car weighs 6,000 pounds. John O'Keefe weighs 200 pounds. It would not have registered hitting a pedestrian. In addition to reviewing this information, he used data retrieved from the Techstream. Now, the Techstream data is designed to capture maintenance issues, but it's important, this information or this data point is important for an accident reconstructionist because it gives you these triggering points or this triggering data, but it only captures triggers in increments of 10 seconds. So basically, when there is a trigger, the Techstream will capture 5 seconds before the trigger and 5 seconds after the trigger. And unless there is another different trigger, the Techstream will basically stop recording, even if the car continues to drive on, right? So that's how I understood this testimony to be. Again, he did testify that the internal clock of the Lexus runs somewhat like a stopwatch, and it isn't synced with a regular clock or like local time. So for example, the internal clock of the Lexus will start when the car turns on, and then it's a continuous clock from then until the car is turned off. Any triggering event that occurs during that on and off period will be tied to the running clock, not a regular world clock. We heard about this last week with Mr. Burgess when he testified, but hopefully that will refresh your recollection. Okay. Dr. Welcher testified to Karen Reed having 2 triggering events take place from when she started her car at the Waterfall on January 29th and when she turned her car off at One Meadows after leaving 34 Fairview, regardless of what happened there, right? He said that her car was turned on at 12:36 a.m., and this was called 11:62. The first triggering event after the car was turned on was a 3-point turn, which Dr. Welcher testified occurred roughly 11 minutes after her car turned on, and that would have been consistent with occurring at 12:23 a.m. The next triggering event occurred 8 minutes after that 3-point turn, and that would have occurred roughly at 12:32 a.m. And that's when the car registered being placed in neutral, then in reverse, traveling 53 feet backwards, and then traveling 34 feet forward for a total of 87 feet before the triggering event stopped recording. He also mentioned the speed of the car when it was going in reverse, and he did mention that her wheels were spinning but not actually moving initially. Like it may have been that it was like stuck in the snow or going so fast or something like that. Since the car only records triggering events, the last recorded event was her going forward at 23 miles per hour after she had backed up, those 50 odd feet. Now, when asked what time this triggering event occurred, meaning this backing up event, he said that it occurred at 12:32 a.m. This is Dr. Welch giving his opinion on these items. Now, I just like it when you hear it from the experts directly, and I'm not sure that I can give them any justice.
Your study of these Techstream events, do you have an opinion, to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty, how many triggering events occurred? How many triggering events occurred in that ignition cycle 1162?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow that.
In 1162, the Techstream recorded 2 triggering events.
And do you have an opinion as to the type of triggering event, the type of movement of the defendant's Lexus in those 2 triggering events?
I do.
Regarding the first triggering event, 1162-1, do you have an opinion, to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty, what type of event the first triggering event was?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow that.
The actual trigger was excessive rearward acceleration. The event was during the course of a 3-point turn.
And do you have an opinion, to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty, the time between triggering event 1 and triggering event 2 in that cycle 1162?
Yes.
And could you share with the jury your opinion, to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty, the time between those 2 triggering events?
Approximately 8 minutes and 5 seconds.
And do you have an opinion, to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty, as to the type and triggering event of the second event, 1162-2?
I do.
And could you share with the jury your opinion, to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty, the type of event to that second triggering event?
I'm going to allow it.
It's, again, the trigger event itself was a transition into reverse and then high throttle application. It's a forward motion followed by a lengthy high-speed rear impact, or rear motion.
Your Honor, I'm going to move to strike that portion of the answer.
Yes, I'm not going to highlight it.
I
So
appreciate that.
get the answer again.
Do you like me to ask the question again, Your Honor?
Yes, Mr. Lessie, yes, right? I'll strike the previous answer. Go ahead and ask the question again.
Okay. Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty as to the nature of the second triggering event, 1162-2?
Just for the record, Your Honor,
Yep.
Yes.
Could you share your opinion with the jury?
The triggering event was high throttle opening in a transition to reverse. It's a forward motion followed by a higher speed rear motion. And at the end of the trigger event, you're still at 74% throttle.
Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty the entire distance captured in that 10-second window during the backing maneuver, or 1162-2?
Do I have an opinion about it?
Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty about
Yes.
the entire distance that is captured in that 10-second window of the second triggering event, 1162-2?
So it obviously only captures what's going on during the trigger. It doesn't capture before or after the trigger.
Understood. Do you have an opinion as to just what is captured as far as the distance?
Yes,
And what is your opinion?
that it's 87 feet. So again, the initial forward motion is 34 feet, followed by it backing, crossing the initial point, and then backing up an additional 53 feet.
And finally, regarding this part of your analysis, do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty as to whether the defendant's Lexus was decelerating, accelerating, or remaining the same at the end of that data captured at the triggering event 1162-2?
It was accelerating at 74% throttle.
In addition to your analysis of the Techstream data, one final question. Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty the relative time this backing maneuver occurred with the defendant's Lexus that you just spoke about?
Yes.
And could you share with the jury your opinion to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty?
Sure. It matches the window of the cell phone data for Mr. O'Keefe that puts it in front of 34 Fairview. So the backing event occurred somewhere between 12:32:04 and 12:32:12.
After this, Dr. Welcher discussed also recreating the vehicle bump between Karen Reed's car and John O'Keefe's car at 5 a.m. Remember, that's when she was backing up to go to Jen McCabe's house. He actually, Dr. Welch, actually went back to One Meadows and he did this entire 3D scan of both cars. And then he recreated the accident, or, kind of like that bump, to see how that bump would affect the vehicles. Would it break any taillights? Would it cause any damage? That type of stuff. And during his recreation, he determined that Karen Reed was likely going at about 1 mile per hour when she was backing up, and that hitting John's car would not have resulted in any taillight damage to either vehicle. In fact, he did mention that there was really no damage or no damage at all to John O'Keefe's car.
When you did your analysis and study, trying to include or exclude this touching as the source of damage to the defendant's Lexus rear right taillight, did you consider speed as part of that analysis?
I did. I considered speed, and then again, knowing we have the positions of the vehicle, we looked at the degree of overlap, and there's only about 2 to 3 millimeters of overlap between the vehicles, which is insufficient to cause the tail light that's recessed in from the edge on the right rear of the Lexus to contact the rear of the Chevrolet.
Considering all the data and analysis that you did you come to a conclusion to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty whether the right rear taillight of Miss Reed's Lexus was broken or damaged during the contact with Mr. O'Keefe's car at around 5:07 a.m. on January 29, 2022?
That impact did not break or crack that taillight.
Is that your opinion?
That's my opinion.
Is that to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty?
That's to a high degree of engineering certainty.
The third area that Dr. Welcher testified to was about the injuries that John sustained. And this was really interesting. He basically recreated a pedestrian hit using himself as John and the Karen Reed replica Lexus. John O'Keefe was 6 feet 1 inches tall and he weighed 216 pounds. Dr. Welcher is 6 feet and half an inch tall and he weighs 220 pounds, which makes him an excellent stand-in for John. So he acted like the victim in his replica. In order to recreate potential injuries, they used blue paint. They put blue paint on the taillights of the vehicle, specifically the right rear taillight, to see where on the victim's bodies injuries might occur. Additionally, Dr. Welcher was carrying a glass purchased from the same manufacturer that the Waterfall obtains their glasses to see how injuries might occur had John been carrying a glass. Oh, and one more thing. Dr. Welcher also wore the exact same brand clothing and size shoes as John did at the time of the accident. I mean, when he recreated this accident, he really recreated it. During his testimony, Dr. Welch pointed out that the Lexus does have a rear wing that was right at the eye level of John's eye, perhaps suggesting that it was this wing when he was hit in the collision that caused the injury to John's eye. But listen, that's just me speculating. We shall see how the Commonwealth actually pulls this together, because remember, it's their responsibility to pull it together at the end. So here is Dr. Welcher explaining that pedestrian accident reconstruction. And listen, if you are only listening to this, this would be one of the videos where I suggest you go back and watch so that you can see where the blue paint ends up on the victim.
This is me. I'm actually 6 feet, half an inch tall. What you see in the upper right is the coroner's examination report for Mr. O'Keefe. He's 73 inches tall. That's 6 feet 1 inches tall. At this time, I was 220 pounds. Mr. O'Keefe, at the time of this incident, was 216 pounds. So I took measurements of myself. I'm actually wearing the same make and size shoes as Mr. O'Keefe, the same brand of jeans as Mr. O'Keefe, the same brand and size shirt of Mr. O'Keefe. You see the Lexus in the background. We have matched the height to the Lexus. What I'm showing here is both my height, and then keep in mind where the height of this wing is relative to my right eye. So now I'm wearing, in addition to the same shirt and shoes, same type of sweatshirt, and actually the same kind of baseball hat. We tried to determine the exact glass from the Waterfall grill. Found out they were getting different ones at different times, but I ordered my glass from the same distributor that Waterfall Grill ordered their glasses from. So you can see in my right hand here, I have a glass. Here's a glass. It looks similar. It's from the same location. And then in the lower right photograph, what I've done is I've rolled up my sleeve, taken the sweatshirt off, and I'm going to look at how this contact pattern lines up. So the first set of slides, I'm simply standing next to the Lexus. We know we have a broken taillight. We know how scratches on Mr. O'Keefe's arm. I'm seeing how those may or may not relate to the height and position of the taillight.
Dr. Welcher, if you could back up one slide, I have a question for you. In the middle photograph, at the top of the Lexus, there's like a rim. What do you call that?
I call it a wind wing. I mean, it could be a wing.
Okay, thank you.
Air dam would be another. Okay, so I then set about to do a little bit of testing with the Lexus. The first test you're going to see is me just walking backwards, or actually sideways, into the Lexus. What I've done is I've painted the Lexus right rear tail light with what's called grease paint. Kind of sort of like paint, but it doesn't dry. And then I have backed up sideways, side shuffled into the Lexus with my arm out to see what the damage pattern looks like, or basically where someone of Mr. O'Keefe's height's arm would contact the rear tail light. So then what you see is I've shown the photographs again. I show the paint transfer onto my arm. The yellow grease paint on my hand was to show where my hand would hit the tail light. And so just kind of me walking slowly sideways into it, the approximate location of the tail light, and I'll line it up with the broken tail light in a second, lines up with the approximate location of the lacerations on Mr. O'Keefe's arm.
Dr. Welcher, let me ask you a question. When you're engaging in these demonstrations, are you attempting to try to show exactly how Mr. O'Keefe was struck?
No. So we don't know exactly how he was struck, and pedestrian impacts are extremely sensitive to exact angles, and so where exactly your foot is, whether your foot's off the ground, can have an effect on where you end up after that. We just don't have enough information in this case to determine all that information. We know the taillight was broken. We know the glass was broken. We know we have damage to the rear of the Lexus. We know we have lacerations in Mr. O'Keefe's arm. So I'm trying to see if there's any correlation between all those.
Well, can body posture on a clip or a side swipe collision change the trajectory or the injury?
Of course.
Can the way somebody moves or reacts before impact change it?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
What are other things that can change the trajectory of the person and the injuries?
So, for example, if you get hit and knocked off balance, or clipped and knocked off balance, you can take additional steps. That'll affect how far your body travels. If you have one foot on the ground versus the other foot on the ground, affects how the body rotates. If your arm is at 90 degrees or 85 degrees, will affect the kinematics. We attempted to model different possibilities, and we're getting results that were all over the map. Small changes in the pedestrian position give you huge change in the output. And so from the Techstream data, we don't know exactly when in the Techstream data he was hit. So we don't even know the exact impact speed. In most pedestrian reconstructions, you typically have a point where the impact occurred, like where the person was, like in the crosswalk, for example, and they get hit and their tire leaves a rubber scrub. That's called the area of impact or point of impact. You then can look at how far they were thrown, and using some laws of physics, calculate how fast the car had to be going. Well, we don't have that in this case. We don't know exactly where Mr. O'Keefe was on the roadway when this happened. Sorry, I'm about to go to the next slide. No.
Without having an exact point of impact or an exact speed or an exact body position, are you able to specifically replicate the actual collision and the way Mr. O'Keefe's body would move?
Exactly replicate? No. And again, in terms of how he would move, again, we don't know where exactly on the roadway he started. So in terms of how he moved, that's a function of where he started. We don't know if when he was clipped, he took an additional step before falling backwards. So that will change how far you are off the roadway. So the impact, which you'll see in a second, even at 2 miles an hour, will induce rotation of the body. So depending on the speed, the higher the speed, the more rotation. So if I may, so slide 111, this is simply showing where I walk sideways, how this lines up with the location of the lacerations on Mr. O'Keefe's arm. Here's the post-contact scuffing on the taillight. Here's a picture of Miss Reed's vehicle on the right-hand side. So now I said, okay, you know, that was me walking into the car. Let's have the car drive into me. I did this at very low speeds. And you'll see, and we'll throw this from two different angles. That's me showing I'm doing test 2. This is from a camera that we have pointing down at it. This is the speed. You'll see it's only about a 2-mile-an-hour impact. But even a 2-mile-an-hour impact redirects me back and causes me to rotate and take a step.
Which speed is the car traveling?
You can see it. About 2 miles an hour.
Okay.
Excuse me, Your Honor, that is the objection that we spoke about.
Oh,
and that I
okay.
would like to go.
All right, so that's noted, Mr. Lysy.
So similar to the other test, this is the post-contact image of the transfers onto my arm. Actually, the yellow paint you can see from my hand is here. This is from the arm and forearm. Here's the paint transfer pattern.
And that slide number,
I'm
Dr.
sorry,
Welcher?
I'm terrible with that.
That's
Slide
okay.
116 now. That was 115.
Thank you.
Slide 116. What I've done is I've taken these yellow lines to show the extension of the components on the rear of the exemplar Lexus. Then I've done this extension of those same components on the rear of Miss Reed's Lexus and shown how the approximate location of the fractures in the taillight match up with the approximate location of the contact of the arm onto the taillight.
Dr. Welcher, do you have any indication of how Mr. O'Keefe's arm was bent, what angle it was bent at?
Not exactly, but for these to be taillight shard fragments, they would need to be in the area of the taillight, but it could be further up. We know from the police photographs that there was a damage to the rear body panel in the area I'm searching here. So it's possible his arm was a little higher up and the glass hit the rear of the Lexus and caused that damage.
In the bottom right,
Excuse me, Your Honor, objection and speculation.
I will strike that last part about the glass.
Thank you, Your Honor.
the purpose of the circle is for what, Dr. Welcher?
To show, in this case, primarily the location of the lacerations up on the arm, the upper part of the arm, and that they match up with the locations of at least the one remaining shard in the rear taillight of Ms. Reed's Lexus.
Looking at the picture of the Lexus bottom right middle, are there any marks on the Lexus itself that you took note of?
Yes, it's on the next slide.
Thank you.
Actually, it's 2 slides. So there, again, this is the evidence marker. There was a horizontal scuff. We know Mr. O'Keefe had blue jean type pants on. There's a scuff in the area that would approximately correspond to hip level for Mr. O'Keefe.
And next slide, please.
Yes, ma'am, 118.
Thank you.
Did you describe what you saw on the bottom right-hand corner photo as well?
I believe, yes, I did. That's the scuff that lines up with the approximate height of Mr. O'Keefe's right hip. So then I included previous image that you've seen, slide 119, with the reconstructed photograph of the rear taillight, showing where some of the fragments are. You can see where those fragments are relative to the curvature of the taillight. They'd be in the area somewhat centered within the region of the 2 yellow lines on slide 119.
Is there anything about the photograph in the top right-hand corner that's important? If so, could you zoom in and show us?
So again, it's showing that this is when it's, I believe, in the Sally Port at the police station, showing that scuff on the right rear body panel.
Did you see any similar scuffs in the middle back of the car?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Did you see anything notable as far as damage to the middle back of this Lexus?
The middle,
Yes,
like back where the doors are,
but with the middle of the back of the car, did you see any similar damage to the middle? Or
there
the
were
left?
scuff marks that ran along the bumper.
Okay, continue, please.
So this is just showing his jacket he was wearing, that the puncture marks coincide to the marks on his arm. This is from the autopsy report. A couple things it notes: a 0.5 centimeter abrasion on his right lateral knee. He's got a laceration on his right eyelid. That corresponds to the height of that thin rear wind wing on the back of the Lexus.
Your Honor, I'm going to object.
Sustained.
Thank you.
How tall was Mr. O'Keefe?
73 inches tall, 6'1".
And how high was that wing from the ground on the back of the Lexus?
It's about 5 feet 11 inches, maybe 5 feet 10 and a half.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
During this testimony, there were a lot of sidebars taking place. But if you were able to watch the video, you can actually see that the blue paint does come off on Dr. Welcher's arm, almost exactly where John's scratched up injuries are seen in the images, which really shocked me. I just wasn't expecting to see that. I thought it was really well done by the Commonwealth.
Sir, do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty about the lacerations on Mr. O'Keefe's right arm and forearm regarding its orientation relative to the broken taillight on the defendant's Lexus?
Yes. Your Honor, may I read my report, my opinion?
Okay.
The location and orientation of the laceration on John O'Keefe's right forearm and arm are consistent with the geometry and orientation of the right taillight of the Reed 2021 Lexus LX 570.
Again, I think this evidence is pretty powerful for the Commonwealth, but Dr. Welcher was not yet done with his testimony today. He will pick up again tomorrow on direct examination. When we wrapped up today with Dr. Welcher, he was discussing head injuries and how collision head injuries might differ from actual assaults to the head. Oh boy, y'all, listen, I feel like things are really getting heated, and I can tell that the Commonwealth is getting ready to wrap up. The jury was released today, and they were given the same warnings as always. Don't talk about this case. Don't Google anything. Don't even turn on the TV or your computer or your cell phone, really, All right, listen, that was it for day 21. What do you think? How often has your opinion changed throughout the testimony in this trial? That's all that I have for you today. If you want more of Tab and I, be sure to check out our Patreon, where we give you our unfiltered opinion about this case. We just released our 3rd unfiltered episode, so check it out at patreon.com/thealternate. We'll see you tomorrow for day 22. Until then, think like a juror, decide